I've never been to Indiana. And my only real knowledge of Indiana is of a place that one of my mythological childhood heroes came from, James Dean.
Yes.
An eternal mythological character. Could you paint a tone poem for me, utilizing some word wizardry to describe to someone who has never been there what Indiana is like?
Well, I'll start with something that my mother always says to me. She says, with all of the years I've lived in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, that I have forgotten how to mosey. So I think that people in Indiana they mosey. It's a slower pace. They eat slower, they talk slower. Seems like they just savor the moment more, I suppose. It's not, dinner is still an occasion every evening, and there's city life, and there's farm life, and there's just a very small portion of suburban life in between those two.
What kind of environment were you raised in?
I was raised in a pretty affluent neighborhood. It's the northern suburb of Indianapolis. I went to a very nice school, and I am very grateful for having been given the education that I was given. But I was right in between the city and the farms.
Did you interact at all with farm animals in a farm-like environment? Or did you just see a cow through the car window when you were going down the highway?
The farms there are less dairy farms and more, like corn and soybeans and things like that. So more agriculture.
What kind of a relationship did you have with your parents?
I have a good relationship with both of my parents. I didn't always, but I do now.
What was it like then, when you say you didn't always? Where was the imbalance? I mean, as a child, if you reflect back in childhood memories.
Oh, I have a lot of memories as a child. I was a middle child, and I have an older brother and a younger sister. And I was very independent, and I loved to play with my brother, and I looked up to him and his friends and always wanted to play. But a lot of times, because I was a girl and I was younger, I was left out. And my sister and I just never really got along growing up, and I'm not quite sure where the separation of that happened, but there was just never any closeness between the two of us. And so I just was outside a lot, barefoot, almost all year long. You
are now.
I am now, yes. But I just played by myself, and I made mud pies with the dirt outside, and I caught caterpillars, and I would catch crawdads in the creek right behind our house. And my father worked a lot, and my mother was at home, but I think she was trying to find herself as well. She did makeup, and she went to hair school when I was in junior high school, I believe. But I just was very independent, and I think that's where I credit my artistic abilities, because I really spent a lot of time, drawing, coloring, sketching. If I was indoors, that's what I was doing. I was pretty depressed as a child. I guess not so much as a child, but maybe a teenager. I was pretty depressed.
What depressed you?
I don't know. I felt like I didn't belong where I was. I knew that I didn't belong in Indiana. I knew there was this whole other life outside of that just waiting for me to arrive. And I started feeling very cooped up.
When did you first realize that there was something unique, something special about you in terms of artistic abilities and in terms of point of view?
Well, when I was in kindergarten, first grade. All of the other children are selling lemonade at their little lemonade stands, and I had a cardboard, like a card table out on the front at the end of our driveway, and I would make these little like 4-inch by 6-inch drawings, and I would tape them all around, and my neighbors would come by and purchase them for 10 cents. I don't even remember what they were, but all of my neighbors had them pinned on their refrigerators, and growing up, I mean, I never stopped drawing. I watched Bob Ross paint, and there was a really fun guy, and I think his name was Commander Mark, and he used to draw these spaceships and these aliens, and I loved them. I just loved that. And so I would just sit with a little, you have your little, I don't know what they're called, tray table. Mm-hmm. When we were little, I mean, mine was like strawberry shortcake, and it was just had these two very short little metal legs, and you just sit Indian style on the ground.
I think we called them TV dinner tables.
Yes, pretty much. I ate a lot of TV.
Swanson TV dinners,
Yes.
and those little metal things that you kind of close and open, and the tray falls over
Yes.
the stand.
Yes. So I had a strawberry shortcake one, and I would sit in front of the TV, and I would draw. I would try to draw those aliens and those spaceships and those alien lands that he was making. I mean, he was teaching kids how to draw, but he just did it in a really fun way. And I remember that I had a sketchbook, and I would try to copy cute little pictures of, a puppy lapping up water out of his dish, or a rabbit, or, just anything I could that inspired me. And I loved nature, so I just was always sketching. And I never went without the tools to be able to draw or color. I always had crayons or colored pencils or charcoal pencils and paper.
When did you seriously consider boys?
Between 8th and 9th grade. It's probably when I was, a kind of coming of age time for girls, and that's, I think, when I really started noticing them and thinking of them in a different light.
I want to give you the stage. I want you to take the time that you need to express to whoever will find this of value a little bit about your life's journey. I know this is kind of difficult.
That's a loaded question.
Not an 800-page biography, of course. But I want you to take me from Indiana to its peak, and then I want you to talk to me about what happened. Do you think you could do that?
Sure. That's a very loaded question, but I'm sure I can.
I'm going to unload it.
Right.
Because there's no intent here to, embarrass you or.
Oh no, not at all. I'm just saying there's so much. It's hard to find a starting point, but. They'll
come to you.
Yeah.
Bullet points will just emerge.
Right, they always do. I was born and raised in Indiana. We moved around quite a bit. I think I've moved at this point maybe over 40 times in my life. So I kind of consider myself a bit of a nomad, kind of a gypsy soul. I feel like home is where the heart is, and like claustrophobic almost. I mean, I know it's hard for someone who doesn't understand claustrophobia to understand that claustrophobia doesn't necessarily mean that it's a small space sometimes, but I felt very cooped up and claustrophobic. And I remember hitchhiking with my girlfriend in 9th grade just so I could cross the state line and say, I can do it, I can get out of here just even for a couple of minutes. I just need to be on the other side of Indiana just for a moment. And, but I don't know what exactly I was so depressed about. I didn't have a great relationship with either one of my parents. They were both in just so much turmoil. They had divorced when I was in the 6th grade. And there was a custody battle that ensued until I had, my older brother graduated and moved to California. I graduated and moved to California, and my sister graduated and became an adult, and then it was over. So there was a lot of fighting in my home and a lot of arguing, and I always felt stifled, I guess, as an individual. I felt My opinion didn't count. My words were never heard. A little bit abandoned, which is why I think I just sought solace outside. I mean, I would draw up little treasure maps, pretend treasure maps, and walk outside my door and start stepping however many steps I had written and see where I ended up. I would climb trees to the highest limb, branches that couldn't even hold me, and I didn't weigh hardly anything, but I was swaying at the top, and I just kind of was adventurous and looking for something. I didn't know what, but I don't know. I think I just was lost, and there was no one there to help guide me to find myself.